Here we are. This hangout is live. 3, 2, 1.
This is Literary Roadhouse, one short story once a week. I'm Gerald.
I'm Maya.
I'm Anais.
And I'm Kenechi.
And on today's show, we are discussing The Old Man at the Bridge by Ernest Hemingway.
But first, I want to let everybody know that our show is rated PG-13 for occasional potty mouth. We're not too bad, but occasionally a bad word may slip. If you have children that you're wanting to listen to the podcast, you can check iTunes, and each episode is individually rated. Also, I want to give you a few of this week's notifications. We have a huge development. Not only have we been available on iTunes and Stitcher for a really long time, since the beginning of the podcast, as of last week, we became available on Spreaker. And this is a huge deal for us because Spreaker is a feeder into iHeartRadio. So here's what I need for you guys to do, because this getting into iHeartRadio will make our podcast accessible to a lot of people who don't normally listen to podcasts. It'll be available in cars, but more importantly, a lot of people that listen to regular radio listen to iHeartRadio. In order for them to pick us up from Spreaker, we need to have followers. We need to have about 20 to 100, depending on how they're going to categorize us. So if you have Spreaker, or you've considered getting Spreaker, if you can go over, sign in, and click follow and heart us if you like us, I'd really appreciate it. It would help us a lot.
Okay, so this week we are discussing The Old Man at the Bridge by Ernest Hemingway. If you've not had a chance to read it yet, but you want to read it, I'm just about to do a summary of the story. So listen away, turn away now. Otherwise, carry on. So, The Old Man at the Bridge is a very, very short story. Kenechi and I were talking about this earlier, and it's in flash fiction territory, we think. That's 773 words, including the title. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. So, it's basically written from the point of view of a narrator who's looking at a scene in front of him during the, I think it's the Spanish Civil War, and there's an old guy at a bridge, and basically he's been told that he has to leave his hometown, and there are opposing forces moving in, and the narrator tries to get him to move on to safer ground, and basically the guy is just too tired and doesn't want to go. And that's the story, basically, I think. How did we feel about it?
You hate me, Gerald, don't you?
No, not at all.
This was revenge for all that magical realism, wasn't it?
Not at all.
I have to say I did not like the story.
Okay.
And here's the thing, because I went into it, and I've never read Hemingway because I've always heard he was kind of like that there was sexism or whatever. And I'm pretty lenient, but I just never was in the right mood. But I always planned on reading Hemingway, and I went into this expecting, it was weird. I had a preconceived notion that I might not like it, but I was hoping to like it. So I went into this open-minded and hoping to find something in it that I would enjoy. And when I came away from the story, my thought was, where's the story? And it was beautiful, but I didn't see a story, and it didn't stay with me at all. How about you guys?
I'm the exact opposite. I think the story works simply because there isn't a story. I like the way how it's just like a snapshot of war, and it's, you know, this narrator talking about his experience of war, but at the same time he's talking about, you know, the people that, especially now as well, like in a lot of media today, when they talk about war, we don't really talk about the people who just get like, who aren't really fighting in the war, who are just there and have to move as a result of it, which is what the story is about. But I like how the absence of a story kind of makes it so it doesn't impose the writer's views on us. It's just kind of, you know, this and this happens, and it kind of leaves you to feel how you feel about that, which is, I think that works for it.
For me, it's sort of like I get it, and I still don't love it. The first time I read it, I walked away from it, and I was just like, no. that's not a story. But then the second time, maybe I was less distracted. I was a bit more generous. I liked it a little bit more, but not enough where if somebody asked me to recommend a short story, this is the one that I would say. So it's not on my top list. But I know Hemingway is a good writer. I've read other Hemingway stuff. It's funny, when I first read this, I was a little grumpy afterwards, and it made me think of when you go to a modern art museum and there's like all the great works of Picasso, you're like, oh, that's amazing, that's great, that's amazing. And then there's like one tiny little sketch from like a notebook that he probably did while he was like waiting at the DMV back in the day that's still there just because it's Picasso. And that's how I felt here. Like, I know there's great Hemingway works, but he just sketched this out and everyone's like, oh, it's Hemingway. We still got to put it in like the museum. That's kind of how it felt.
That's exactly how I felt, Anais.
You're so cruel, you two.
Okay, Gerald, tell us why we're wrong.
Because it's stark. It's Hemingway. It's stark. It's simple. It's beauty of simple words. And it's a snapshot. And as Kenechi said, it's about the person, and it's not about the bridge or what's happening. It's about that person, and the guy is just too old and too tired to get to safety, and it's just beautifully drawn, and there's so many lovely bits to it. You know, I in my notes I've underlined all sorts of, you know, there's, I don't know, I think you either love it because it's stark and simple, or you think, yeah, so what?
Here's the thing. I'm all for stark and simple. Okay, I can love me some stark and simple. I write flash fiction. I read flash fiction. I love poetry. To me, you say it's about the person. I didn't see any person aside from the fact that he likes cats and he's old. Like, I wanted to see more person. Now, that didn't have to be done in a bunch of different words. It could have been done very economically. But I left the story with no sense of this old man. Like, it was a very vague sense that there's an old man and he's lonely. And I left it with no real sense of the soldier. I would have been perfectly happy if I would have left with a good sense of either of them. I didn't need both of them, either of them. To me, this story was like if I were to write a poem that said, my fridge, it's full of groceries. Okay, yeah, I'm walking. There's an old man. He has cats. Like, that's kind of how I felt. And I wanted more. I really, really wanted more from the story. And I totally get what you meant, Anais, because I was like, why did this have to be the first Hemingway I read? Because I was looking forward. Like, he's supposed to be a master, and I could see in his language. The first thing that really caught me was, I think it was either the first or the second sentence. There's a very interesting use of comma. I know this sounds totally nerdy. I'm getting all in the weeds here. But there was an interesting use of comma. I had to read the sentence twice. And it was beautiful. It was not how I would have ever considered to write the sentence. So I'm like, he's this amazing writer, obviously. I can tell by the skill in the story. But I still did not like it at all. And I want to know why.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that sentence that I've got it in front of me. It starts. There was a pontoon bridge across the river, and carts, trucks, and men, women, and children were crossing it. And the fact that there's carts, trucks, and men, women. It separates the people from the things, and that's what he's doing. Overall, he's separating this man from the war. It's intrinsic to the story, but it's all about the old guy. It's about what he's feeling. There's clues all the way through. It's kind of hard to explain if you're not getting it. And that sounds really bad, actually. I take that back.
No. It's not a matter of not getting. It's a matter of not enjoying, because I get, like, the whole thing about, like, the cats versus the goats. That's totally a metaphor. This young man is going to survive. He's a cat. The old guy cannot self-sustain himself. He's a goat. He's going to die. There's no way he's going to, like, be able to survive this mess. So, I can see the symbolism. It just wasn't enjoyable. Anais, I saw your tongue hanging out.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head because I got it a little bit differently. So when you were saying that you wanted more from the old man, I think not having the old man be a super well-defined character is the whole point of it. Because the old man, he even says he's apolitical, he doesn't have politics, and his role was just sort of, taking care of these animals that are being displaced by the artillery fire that's coming in. So what animals do you have? You have the cat, which is the survivor, which they say bluntly in the story. So then you have the birds who can fly away, the pigeons, and then you have the goat. And I feel like these choice of animals are very purposeful because the goat makes you think of, goats are pretty much just victims. They only exist to be prey. You have the sacrificial lamb. The goats are very much are a sacrifice animal, or the scapegoat, somebody who's innocent gets all the blame. So I feel like that's the casualty of war is the goat. But all the casualties of war are being represented by the goat. The survivors, that's the cat. And then I don't know what to make too much of the pigeons. I said refugees. They're flying away and finding a new home. So perhaps they represent the refugees. And a little bit later, the narrator, who's a soldier, calls them doves, which can be kind of hopeful and peaceful, except it's more like a slip of the tongue. And then he follows up with that saying, but if you don't leave, you're going to die. So it's not, it's still pretty bleak. It's kind of like, it's almost like it's an afterthought, that aspect of it. So I think the old man is a goat in the sense that he's going to be a casualty of war, but he has resigned himself to that fate. He's very fatalistic. He's just going to sit there until the fascists cross the bridge. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't actually read into any of that, to be honest with you. For me, this whole story is just like a message kind of representing the futility of war, because it's like you have the fascists, and then you have the narrator side, and they're obviously fighting this war. And in the middle of it all, you have this old guy who just really couldn't care less about the war. All he cares about is his animals. And it's kind of like, to me, it's kind of like this whole thing of, politics and people killing each other. But at the end of the day, what is it really all for? Because the old man who lives there, that actually he's going to be affected by it all, he doesn't care less about it. So I kind of just read it as that, rather than him being a metaphor for the goats being a metaphor for him and surviving. And I just kind of read it as, despite the fact that maybe young people or people in power want to wage war against each other, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And that's the tragedy of it all, the fact that this man's going to sit there and he's going to die when it has absolutely nothing to do with him, but that's just how it is.
You're not going to hear any argument from me, Kenechi. All of that, I totally picked up on all of that. I don't think it's either or. I think what me and Anais are talking about are the symbolism that helps support that. Yeah, but I definitely feel that that you're right on, that this really is about the futility of it all.
And like you were saying, this old man's apolitical. He's not interested in, both sides of it, but he's still going to die. He's still a casualty of the war nonetheless, and that much is certain.
There's the bit that's about 2/3 of the way through, where he says, I'll wait a while, he said, and then I will go. Where do the trucks go? Towards Barcelona, I told him. I know no one in that direction, he said. So that's it. It's just, it's not important where the trucks are going to the narrator. It's important that they're going away from the fascists and they're escaping. But he's just saying, why should I go away from the place that I live and the place that I love? He sees no point to it. And again, I think Kenechi's right. It's the futility of the war, and it's just put very simply and very starkly. Yeah.
Gerald, you've read this before, right?
Yeah.
About how did you feel about the first time you read it versus now? Did you see a difference over multiple readings?
Um, it hit deeper on subsequent readings. On the first reading, it was it was pretty much about the sort of the surface story and what you saw through the narrator's eyes. But I read it twice today, and it really does hit home how what a sad story it is, and how sad it is for the guy, but he doesn't feel sad because he just sees no point to it. He's being forced out of his home by this war, and he can't sort of reconcile himself to that. He can't get interested in it. So it sort of hit a bit deeper on subsequent readings.
Did you like it as much the first time you read it as you did the last time you read it?
Yes.
How about you, Kenechi? How many times did you read it?
I read it just twice through, but this was the first time. I haven't read it before. But it reminds me of one of his other books I've read. I'm not sure if it's For Whom the Bell Tolls or Farewell to Arms. It's the one when he's sent to blow up a bridge or something like that. But it reminds me a lot of that book, and I think in a sense it's very similar to that book, because that book was the whole plot of the book was that he's fighting this war, but it was all about like his connections with the locals, because I think he went into the mountains and he joined the vigilantes and then he fought against the fascists. But like the main like core of the book and the story and the part I guess you invested is his connection with the individuals that actually live there. And then at the end of this story, I think it's also similar to this in the sense that you don't really get that feeling of something actually being accomplished, and it kind of just, it's that human connection that is kind of displayed. So I think this is very similar to that, but just like a much shorter version.
Mm-hmm.
I've read somewhere that originally this was meant to be like a news snippet when he was working as a war correspondent. This was originally something he was going to like send in, and then instead he didn't, and he made it a short story. But a lot of the facts in it, I think it actually was on Easter Sunday, and it was in Ebro, the Ebro Delta. Like it's almost a copy and paste from an experience that he had. He wasn't a soldier or a scout, but I don't know if he actually talked to an old man or if he just sort of witnessed,
And that may be why I don't like it. That right there may be why I don't like it so much.
Because it's written from a sort of actual experience.
No, not because it's written from an experience, but because Anais, do you remember a long time ago you said when I was talking about writing fast fiction, you were like, I've read some and I don't like it because all it is a mood?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's how I felt about this.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was a mood. I felt like it was a mood and a message, but I didn't feel like there was any character or any story. And the more I read it, the grumpier it made me. It actually made me grumpy.
Wow.
Which is funny, but now I'm linking back. I remember taking a class with Holly Lyle, and she was saying if a reader leaves a story without feeling like there was a point to reading the story, you'll make your readers grumpy. And I didn't really get it, but I totally felt that when I finished the story. And if this was originally part of a war correspondence, then it would have been followed up with facts and details about what happened. It would not have ended this way. And so it's really a snippet, which would explain to me why I don't like it, which surprises me because I like a lot of things that are, a mood or an experience. But there just wasn't enough for me to bite onto with this one. I think if it would have had more story, or if the characters would have been, if at least one character was more central so I could latch onto them, I would have enjoyed it more because I would have had something to hang myself on. That's a bad choice of phrase, but you know what I mean. I would have had something to latch onto versus this just general feeling of desolation and pointlessness and sadness and, death and destruction. There was nothing around it for me to really latch onto.
Yeah, but I think not fleshing out the characters too strongly is what makes the mood so, because you keep saying you picked up on the mood a bit. So the mood is really potent, and I think as soon as you start saying, well, and the old guy felt this way about that party, but he wishes that nobody would. Like, as soon as you
I
start
don't
giving
think
him,
you need to do that to have character.
no,
I
but
don't
I
think
feel
character
like,
is about your thought about necessarily. You know, I couldn't picture him, and that could have been done very simply. You don't have to like give me a full-on description to make somebody something that I can like get right away. Like I had no sense of who this guy was. And it could have been as simple as the way he walked or just something, some trait that would have made him more like more in my mind as a person.
yeah,
I'm not saying that I needed to have all of his background or his political affiliations or anything, and that's not what I'm saying. I just needed to have more of a sense of the person.
yeah, I feel like the only sense you get is that he's depressed and resigned, and I think that's done on purpose. Like it's like he's not fleshing him out so that it's just war is depressing. Check it out. This guy is resigned,
And I left feeling depressed and resigned.
yeah. So he just kind of like transplanted that mood to you. Yeah.
And I didn't like that.
and also he's just an anonymous old guy, and that's the thing about war is that so many hundreds, thousands of people are killed, and they're just names. They're just a lot of the time they're not even names. They're just bodies, and that's what he's trying to say by not fleshing him out. He's just this character that's been picked up by the war, been taken out of his home, and it's sort of, in a way, it doesn't matter who he is, but it's what's happening to him which is the important thing. I feel like I'm defending the story. I don't.
I'm glad.
Yeah, because I enjoyed it.
We've made you like stare at magical realism for how many days now? I think you're allowed to have something you can actually enjoy.
Years, I think.
Oh, really? I'm sure it didn't feel like it was that long.
Get off my lawn.
You think I'm not going to loop that?
Yeah. Oh, good. Very good.
Does anyone have anything else to say about the story?
I just wanted to add, I agree with Gerald as well with the I think it was intentional that we know less about this guy, and also the fact that we're not given his name, we're not given the name of the narrator, and even like just everything about the story seems quite maybe standoffish isn't quite the right word, but it's kind of like it is kind of just, it's a grey day, and the man's described as being dusty, and I think it's just kind of like intentionally bleak to just kind of give you that mood that war is really bad and it's not something that we should be celebrating.
And not only is the setting bleak, but also, the old man is very much resigned to his fate. And so is the narrator, because if the narrator is going in the same direction, he can be like, okay, old man, get up, I'll put my arm under you, I'll help you get there. There isn't even this sense of like that it's even worth it. Like the scout does tell him, try to get to Barcelona, but he doesn't get much further than that. Once the old man stands up and then decides, nah, sits back down, that's it. He's like, all right, well, like there's this kind of like acceptance of everybody that that's just how war is, and there's really not even much point even trying to get to Barcelona because the fascists might meet you there soon anyway. So there's this sort of like, well, do or don't, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I liked this. Somebody mentioned dust, and the word dust was repeated 3 times in just these few words. So he's sort of hammering the situation into you, and also I like the fact that he said that at one point wait a minute, there were not so many carts now, and then it says a few last carts were hurrying down the slope of the bank, and then he says where now there were no carts. So you've got this sort of impending timescale, this almost like a counting down. There were a few carts, there were not so many carts, there are no carts now, and at that point that the narrator has to go and leave this guy there. So you knew something was happening. You knew there was going to be an end to the story soon, But that's more or less about the technique of Hemingway's storytelling, of how he writes and how he delivers messages like that. But yeah, just wanted to say that.
Do you feel like this is a good representation of his short stories?
I think it is, bearing in mind the size of it, the length of it. I think that yes, it within that word count, it represents what he does. So yes, you can have a short story of 4,000, 5,000 words, and it will be quite similar. There will be more detail, there will be more depth to it, but this is what he does. So yeah, if you don't like this, by all means try a longer one, because you might get these extra bits that you wanted, that you were looking for to sort of tag onto, if you like. But,
yeah, I think I finally put my finger on what it was about the story that I didn't like, and it took hearing you speak for me to put my finger on it. And what it is he took me down a really, really dark path of despair and hopelessness, and did not ease me out at all. So that at the end of the story, I wanted to go drive over to Golden Gate Bridge and jump. And it felt so pointless. And it felt pointless both within the story, but also as a reader, it felt pointless to have read it. And I think that's a reflection of the fact that there really wasn't any other emotion besides pointlessness and despair. And for me, that made it impossible for me to enjoy the story, even though the language was so masterful. I just kind of want to smack the kid and drag the old man off. Like, I'm kind of just irritated at the end of it. And I'm realizing it's just because, I love stories that are dark, stories that go into deep, scary places. But as a reader, you got to let me out somehow. And having a sense of maybe the narrator's personality or something else to hang my interest on would have given me something, to pull me out a little bit. And so I'm thinking that's why I didn't like it.
And I think you will also be disappointed in some other of Hemingway's works as well, because he doesn't always bring you out. He doesn't always finish things off in a positive way. It's
or even if it's not positive, just another way. I kind of feel like at the end of the story, they're just both gonna roll over and die. Whereas even Train Spotting, as dark as it gets, there's something. But I kind of just felt like that, and I kind of felt like I wanted to roll over and die too.
There you go.
Which is really funny. I've never read a story that kind of just annoyed me like that. That was really weird.
It's kind of funny with some of the stuff I write. The dark things, I find it difficult to bring the story out. Like you're saying, if it's dark, and it stays dark. So.
And I feel guilty for laughing at your distaste for the magical realism.
No,
I get it now.
No, that's okay. Laugh away. It's fine.
Now we're even.
Yeah. Sorry to inflict this on you.
Oh, that's okay. Anyone gonna bring the energy up now that I want to just roll over and die along with Hemingway and his cats?
Well, I just wanted as a point of comparison to say that the first time I read it, I was grumpy too, but not for those reasons, which I totally get why those reasons made you grumpy. I was okay with being depressed. I don't know what that says about me, but I was fine with that. The thing that bothered me was I didn't immediately get why he's talking, I'm like, Hemingway, why are you doing this whole animal thing? Oh, and the pigeons become doves. There was a part of me that was just kind of I feel like there's a gimmick here that I'm not getting it with the animals the first time I read it that made me grumpy. And then the second time I was like, okay, I think I'm getting it. And then I figured out what the animals mean. But even knowing that, I don't love that he did that. It's just not my style. To the things that I like to read when people are like, oh, it's like numerology with animals to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little cute. And which nobody ever says Hemingway's cute, but just, it's just kind of like, I know Hemingway talks about the iceberg theory, so it's kind of like you have this bleak, dusty iceberg with these animals on it, and you have to, and he's saying, okay, figure out the story from there. Figure it out. And I'm just like, I don't like the dusty animals. Yeah, no.
It's funny, when I read the animals the first time, my initial thought, like the thought that ran through my head was, now I know why he hoarded cats. Because Hemingway hoarded cats. He was a cat hoarder.
Yeah.
And I get it now. It was like a weird insight into his psyche.
He was a troubled man, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
So we are at 34 minutes.
Yeah.
What did you guys make about the fact that he pointed out it was Easter Sunday, and Easter's like supposed to represent like a new birth and new beginnings and new life, but he pointed it out kind of almost as like an afterthought towards the end.
Yeah, I have that same question in my notebook, Kenechi, and the only thing that I can sort of answer to that, because it's supposed to be spring, new awakening, resurrection, hope, and no, like really, this guy's only going to survive Easter Sunday and probably die tomorrow. So I just feel like if it was done on purpose, if it isn't just like a remnant from the news snippet that he kept, if choosing it was a conscious thing, it just seems kind of subversive. Like, haha, it doesn't matter, it's Easter Sunday, it still sucks, don't care about any of your hopeful, religious kind of overtones here, you're still going to die because it's war. War doesn't care about religion. You're all dead. Like, that's kind of what I got from it.
I like you, Anais.
Yeah. She's good, isn't she? Very good.
Yeah. I mean, I have one more thing in my note that I haven't said since, just real quick. The other thing is, once I figured out the animals, though, there was one line that when I read it the first time, I was, like, rolling my eyes. And then the second time, I was like, okay, now that I kind of think I figured out his iceberg, this line is actually quite good. It's when the scout says that the only luck that the old man has now is that it's overcast, so which means that the fascist planes aren't going to be able to, like, bomb this area, and that the cat survived. And when I first heard that the cat survived, I was like, oh no, like it annoyed me the first time I read it because it just seemed cute again. But I get it because it's this sort of like the things that the old man cares for, whether it's the next generation, whether it's his hometown, that one piece of the things that he cared about is going to survive. Not the pigeons who flew off. I mean, they'll survive, but they're no longer of where he is from. The goat is going to be slaughtered, but the cat will stay there. The cat will live. It's not all over. He's going to die, but something that he cared about will survive. This one piece of it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I totally.
Good point.
Very, very good point. Okay. Are we going to rate this puppy?
I'll go last.
I can go first.
On.
The first time I read it, I would have been like 1. But then I read it again, I got it a little better, and I think it's going to be like 3.5 for me.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it jumped up.
Yeah.
2.5. It's for language and the fact that at least he was capable of making me want to jump off a bridge. That shows skill.
Yeah.
Since I'm prone to depression anyway, I'm not sure it was that much of a stretch.
Oh dear.
I'll give it 3 because
I would have thought you would have gone higher than that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to, but at the same time, it's kind of like I don't
What's
know.
holding you back?
It's kind of like how can I explain this? It's like he didn't necessarily like show us something. He kind of just opened the door, so we have to think about it and figure it out, kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it kind of makes me feel like if the story had more to it, then I can give it more. But then, as it is, I have to give it 3.
Now I'm sad too. It's a 5
we can all
for
jump
me.
together.
5.
Yeah.
I love this.
Gerald, I wonder if this is one of those stories, like how I made the comparison to, like, the Picasso drawing he did at the coffee shop one day that's now on the wall. I wonder if that's also part of what makes me a little grumpy about it, because I feel a little bit like, because it's Hemingway and at this point he was already established, like I feel like this, imagine if he was a new writer who had never submitted this to a journal, I don't think it's going to have as much acclaim. Like I feel like it's piggybacking on everything else he's done, which is great, and there's nothing wrong with that, because once you figure out how to read Hemingway, then you know how to read this, and you're like, oh, I get it, I get Hemingway, I know what he's doing. But there is just a little part of me that's like...
That is a really interesting point, Anais. Can you imagine if we logged in the Scribophile?
Yeah.
And... Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I think if an unknown author who's never written anything before and doesn't have any sort of contacts were to submit this, most journals would be like, no, go back to the drawing board, right? Mm-hmm. So there's just something about it that feels a little bit like, oh, it's Hemingway. Now we know what it is. Because if you didn't know it was Hemingway, you don't know really what it is, other than you're depressed, which I guess is a fact.
And it really could go in the opposite way, too. It could be that I've heard so much about Hemingway, like, maybe from the time I was small, that I was expecting, like, some overwhelming experience, and it was a letdown. It could be that if it was an unknown author, I might read it and think, it's poetry. Like, I wouldn't necessarily call this a story. It's really close to prose poetry to me. And if I had read it as prose poetry rather than a story, I might have actually liked it more. Because I'm a little more lenient on poetry, like, making me dive for meaning and theme and stuff. I'm a little more lenient on that. And so, yeah, I think you've got a point. I think maybe the fact that it's Hemingway is affecting how I'm enjoying the story.
And maybe because people are expecting it to be better than or different to what it is, and maybe you're judging him harshly or judging the story harshly because you think it should be better.
Mm-hmm.
But,
so my question for you, Gerald, as our resident Hemingway buff. If I were to go and read another Hemingway story, and your goal was to change my opinion and make me not hate Hemingway, what story would you tell me to read? Story or a book?
I don't know, because I think you're likely to feel the same way about a lot of his writing. So I don't know. In short, I don't know. I can't think of anything that you would think better of at the moment. But
yeah, I was just thinking for the listeners. If a listener had run into this story, maybe they would want like a recommendation. But maybe I'll find something, like a video or something to attach to the show notes with like a good place to like start with Hemingway or something.
Yeah,
something like that for the show notes.
He wrote poetry too, so maybe you could try some of his poetry.
I did not know he wrote poetry. That's awesome. I did not know that.
For it, but yeah.
Okie dokie. What did we get last week for the magic chalk from our viewers?
A 5.
5 Bradberries. That's really awesome. Yeah, I noticed that both Douglas and Maria loved the story last week, which made me really, really happy.
Yeah,
that's what was awesome.
It was great. Douglas and Maria, who may or may not be related to me, it's impossible to tell because, on the internet, nobody knows you're my parents.
We love them, though. They're like our house mom and dad. They're the podcast mom and dad. That's really awesome, though, because out of a scale of 1 to 6, both of them gave it 5s. And this is another reminder for all of our listeners to please go to the website and rate this week's story on a scale of 1 to 6 Bradberries.
If you're feeling charitable, give us 6 just for Gerald. Just to get him through.
Yeah, we don't want to leave him depressed and hopeless.
I don't suffer from depression, so I'm very lucky. But it's up to the individual. It's if you don't like it, you don't like it. It's fine.
I almost thought Joe was going to say it's up to the individual whether or not they want to be right or wrong. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Absolutely. Your choice.
And Gerald, just for you, I'm going to read it one more time next week to myself and see if maybe I like it a little more. I'll give it a chance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all we can ask.
Well, sometimes having these conversations will change the way you feel about a piece, and so I'm actually a little curious to see if anything changes after having had this conversation. What were you going to say, Kenechi?
No, I've read just one Hemingway book, which was For Whom the Bell Tolls, and I really liked it. I mean, it was very similar to this, but I really liked it because at times it really did make you feel the emotion and the mood of, you know, where he was at a particular place in time. And I think that's a powerful thing that not too many authors are not too many authors are as good as Hemingway as doing such a thing.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
then I will put a link to that in the show notes.
Yep. Very good. Game time.
Game time.
Game time.
Let's do this, puppy.
Okay.
I am throwing into the ring Miracle by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
I love her. I'm so excited.
I'm sure I butchered that name. I'm really excited to read this.
I love her.
I've never read anything of her, but I've been reading about her, and I'm very interested in this story.
I read Purple Hibiscus. I'm going to recommend that novel to listeners.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yes.
Go on.
Next. I'm going to have a whole bunch of editing to do tonight, aren't I? I'm going to have to cut out all this mess. We're all trying so hard not to talk over each other.
We're so polite.
So polite.
Okay, so I'm submitting Gooseberries by Anton Chekhov.
Ooh.
I can hang with that.
Yeah, I'm going to put in The Handsomest Man in the World by Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
We've got some really, really great recommendations this week. Pretty much if anybody wins, we're all going to be happy. Well, mostly. I'm looking at you, Gerald. But this time it won't be my fault. It's Kenechi's.
Okay, are we ready for the game?
Okay.
I'm
Right.
nervous.
Don't be nervous.
Not as nervous as I was last week.
Well, I'm I've taken it on board that sometimes the quizzes we've had have stretched people a little far. So here's.
So in other words, you're tumbling down the quiz.
No.
What letter comes after C?
So what we're going to do
is
this week is something very, very different, and we're going to test the capabilities, the ESP capabilities of the Google Hangout. And what I'm going to do is, it's not going to last long, this quiz, I can tell you. I'm going to write a colour on a piece of paper in front of me, and I want you all to guess. I'm looking at the colour, and I'm concentrating hard, and I'm sending you the thought waves. And I would like you to guess what this colour is.
Who goes first?
On the screen, Anais.
Blue.
Wrong.
Purple.
Wrong.
This is unfair because I've already had like 2 guesses, so I know what it's not. Green.
Wrong. Okay.
Yellow. Your 2 guesses didn't help you, did it, Kenechi?
It was.
Well, actually, I was going to say blue. So
It was orange. Okay, I'm going to choose.
Oh.
I'm going to choose a different colour now.
Oh.
You said this was going to go fast.
I was going to
Yeah.
surprise you. The
First
Crayola
off,
colors.
what if
Robin
ESP
Dead
doesn't
blue.
work for colors and it only works for like?
Turquoise. Chartreuse.
Okay. No, they're simple colours. We're not going all airy-fairy here. Okay, I have another colour. I'm looking at it. I'm sending the thought waves. Stronger this time. Come on, guys. Don't let me down. Anais.
Purple.
Wrong.
Wait, are you
Black.
actually? Are you
No.
drawing the color, writing
No,
down the name, or thinking
I'm
about
writing
the
it
color?
on a piece of paper.
You're writing the name, you're not drawing the color.
Correct. I'm writing the name.
What
Yeah,
color
that's
pen? What color pen are you using?
Oh God, this is going
No,
to last
seriously, what
forever,
color
isn't
pen
it?
are you
It's a
using?
blue pen.
Blue. Okay, all right, cool.
He has to picture this. He has to get in the
Yeah,
zone.
yeah. Okay. Yellow.
Wrong.
Uh,
It was grey.
Oh, I was the closest. I said black.
Yeah.
I was close. Not
Yeah.
close enough, but
You have to be closest without going over.
hey, it was the
Okay.
tonality.
Okay, I've got a different colour. So none of the foregoing.
Pink.
Okay.
Wrong. Maya.
Cyan.
Oh. Wrong.
Burnt sienna.
No. It was. Oh, this is terrible. What a stupid quiz this is. It was white.
Oh, you know what's funny? I came really close to saying white. I was looking at. I should have just stuck with my gut. I should have listened to my psychic intuition.
You guys, they're just no.
My
good at
godhead
this.
is very disappointed in me.
Okay.
We are not psychic.
No, and this is going to go on forever, isn't it?
Why do you keep having new colors? Why don't we just keep guessing the same one until somebody gets it?
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. So I have a colour.
Okay.
Please
Red.
guess. Wrong.
Brown.
Wrong. Kenechi.
Purple.
Wrong. Anais.
Beige.
Wrong.
Burgundy.
No, it's a simple colour.
Red.
Kenechi.
There's
No.
only 5 simple colors, so I'm confused. We picked all the simple colors.
No, I may be
So
choosing
it can't be a
colour,
primary color.
but it might.
Yellow.
Wrong. It's a simple colour.
Green.
Nope.
Blue. Oh, sorry.
Hey, Kenechi's got it.
Kenechi got it,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
God,
We're going to be here all night.
Ah, won't do that quiz again, that's for sure.
Our listeners are probably sitting there like, damn idiots.
I knew it was blue.
There's one psychic right now in the audience. It's like, I knew every one of them.
At least it
Okay.
lightened the mood, anyway.
So, Kenechi?
Okay, so the story. I'll say the story again. It was The Handsomest Man in the World by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And to join the discussion, visit literaryroadhouse.com. While you're at it, leave on iTunes or Spreaker leave us an iTunes or Spreaker review and tell us which episode is your favorite. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. Don't forget to tell your friends, and until next time, read a good story.
Okay. Since we are live, do you want to run through that outro one more time, or do you want me to go ahead and do it?
I can do it again. Is it actually a
Yeah.
typo?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. To
Typo
join
in your head.
To join the discussion, visit www.literaryroadhouse.com. While you're at it, leave us an iTunes or Spreaker review and tell us which episode is your favorite. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. Don't forget to tell your friends, and until next time, read a good story.
That was perfect.
Me.
Yay! We made it.